Today we're starting the final section that is going to be covered for our quiz on Monday. So today we're doing 9.3, which is the perimeters and areas of composite figures. All right, so in order to understand today's lesson, you've got to understand what a composite figure is. Composite figures are made up of triangles, squares, rectangles, semicircles, and other two-dimensional figures. If you were to look at this right here, this is made up of two shapes. What two shapes are in there? A square and a triangle. So that's called a composite figure because it's made up of more than one shape. What do you see over here? What two things are there? So we've got a rectangle and a semicircle. Once again, that's considered a composite figure because there are two figures that are in the same figure. Okay, next up, perimeter. The perimeter is the distance around the figure, so the outside. If I was to figure this out, I am trying to figure out what the distance is around the outside. Now, if I was to figure out what the area is, read me what it says to do for the area. Separate into figures with areas you know how to find, then find the sum of those areas. So what you would end up having to do for something like this is you would have to find the area of how much is inside of the square, and then you would have to find the area of how much is inside of the triangle, okay? So we're going to do this here in just a minute. Let's go ahead and write down some formulas you're going to need to know for today's lesson. All right, so the formula for a triangle is area equals half times base times height. The square is the area equals s squared, so you're going to multiply those sides together. A rectangle, area equals length times width. The semicircle and the circle, these are the two formulas we have talked about already. But remember, the only difference between the circle and the semicircle is you have to simply divide the semicircle by 2. Okay, so if you memorize one formula, a equals pi r squared, when you do the semicircle, because it's a half of a circle, you're just dividing it by 2. Once again, these are things you're going to want to have memorized for your quiz on Monday. This is asking us to find both the perimeter and the area of the figure. If you remember, perimeter means the distance around something, okay? So there are some distances here that we already know. What on the outside do I know already by looking at this shape? 8 feet and 6 feet. This is 8 feet, so I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Plus, he mentioned we also know this. That's 6 feet. There is only one small part left. It is this part that I'm highlighting right here. Does it tell me what that distance is? No. What is another word for perimeter of a circle? The distance around the circle. Circumference. Now let's focus on what we know. If this right here is, I'll just kind of finish it off. What shape is that? A semicircle. Did that semicircle give me the diameter or the radius? It gave me the diameter, and here's why. If you look at this, it is the distance all the way across the circle. So we have learned a formula for circumference when dealing with diameter. What was it, class? C equals pi times d. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add that in. C, which is another word for perimeter, it's the circumference, equals pi times d. Now, is that an entire circle that you see right there? No, it's a semicircle. So what do I have to do to my pi times d? We're going to divide it by 2. And this is how we will find the perimeter today. So I'm going to drop this down. 8 plus 6 plus, what am I going to use for pi? 3.14. Does it give me my diameter? Yes. What is it? 10 feet. Times 10. And I have to divide that by 2. Can anything cross-reduce there?
2 and 10.
What does the 2 and 10 become?
2 comes to 1, 10 comes to 5.
Very good. Now I'm going to continue to drop this stuff down. P equals 8 plus 6. Is there any work that I can do right here?
Yes.
Yes. Let's go ahead and multiply the numerators together. 3.14 times 5. Tyra, what do you get? 15.7. Okay, very good. Plus 15.7. So what you have just learned is that is this distance right here. This is 15.7 feet. So as you can see now, all we're doing is we are going to be adding together the entire distance around that. When you add all of those things together, guys, what's my perimeter?
29.7 feet.
Should I square the units?
Yes.
Some say yes, some say no. When do I square my units? Only with the area. Is this my area? No, that's the distance around the figure, so you do not want to square the units, okay? All right, so since it asks us to find the perimeter and the area, over here we're going to go ahead and work with what the area should be. I want you to look up at your notes on the front page. So flip back just one page. And what we wrote there about the area. Up at the top it says composite figure, then it says perimeter. Read to me what it says about the area. Go ahead. Separate into figures with areas you know how to find, then find the sum of those areas. Okay, so we're going to separate it. Can you guys tell me what one figure is that you see over here in our original problem?
Triangle.
All right, it's a triangle, okay? So we're going to go ahead and write triangle. Plus, what's the other one we see, class?
Semicircle.
Not a circle, but a semicircle. So here's the hardest part, figuring out what the formulas are for those two things. Guys, how do I find the area of a triangle?
Add 8 plus 6.
1/2 times base times height. All right, that was right there on the slide that we just did right before this. Once again, this is something you're going to want to memorize and learn. Next up, the area of a semicircle. What's my formula for that? A equals
R squared over 2.
Okay, and we're going to divide it by 2 because it's a semicircle. So let's go back to our original problem over here. When dealing with the semicircle, did it give us the diameter or the radius?
Diameter.
It gave us the diameter. So let's just write this down. D for diameter equals 10 feet. According to what we know there, what would my radius be?
5 feet.
How'd you find that out?
Because half of the diameter is the radius.
The radius is always going to be half of the diameter. So we know that it is 5 feet for my radius. Now what we got to do is just start plugging some things in. We're going to go ahead and focus right now only on the triangle. So the triangle says to find A equals 1/2 times the base times the height. What is the base of my triangle?
6 feet.
6 feet. And what's my height?
48. Or 8.
8. All right, now let's plug in some information for our semicircle. What do we know for pi?
3.14.
3.14. What was the radius of our figure? 5. And remember, we've got to square that and then divide it by 2 because it's a semicircle. So basically all we're doing right now is plugging numbers in. Does anyone have a question for what we've done so far? Okay, let's go ahead and deal with just our triangle to start with. So if you look first off, we're going to go ahead and focus on this. What is half of 6?
3.
3. Then what is 3 times 8?
24.
24. Plus, now we've got to work and focus on this over here. Out of that, what should I do first?
3.14. No, the 5 is.
The exponents. When you think about PEMDAS, okay, we're focusing on P, what's inside of our parentheses there. Now we've got to look at the E exponents. Guys, what does 5 squared mean? 5 times 5. What is 5 times 5? 25. So we're going to multiply times 25, and then because it's a semicircle, we're still dividing by 2. All right, so little by little, we're going to go ahead and get the answer to this. What should I do first? Should I divide those two, or should I multiply across? Then let's go ahead and multiply across. What is 3.14 times 25?
78.5.
Very good. So we're going to add 78.5. Once again, it's a semicircle, so divide by 2. What is 78.5 divided by 2?
39.25.
Now, we have figured out this in here has 24 feet squared. This out here has 39.25 feet squared. So in order to figure out what the area is of this entire figure, we just add those two together. When you add them together, what do you get?
62.25 feet squared.
Okay, why did you square the units? Because you're finding the area, and we always want to square the units when we find the area. Okay, so that is how you find the perimeter and the area of a composite figure. All right, once again, we've got a composite figure because there's more than one figure inside of it. The first thing we're going to try to do is find the perimeter. Remind me again, guys, what does perimeter mean?
Circumference.
It means circumference. What does circumference mean?
Outer part.
The outer part, the distance around an object. So basically what we're trying to figure out today is how far this would be. Okay? Now listen, if you notice right here, it says 2 inches. For that 2 inches, is it saying this is 2 inches?
Yes.
Incorrect. Notice it's a straight line. So what is 2 inches on that? This right here. This straight line is 2 inches. This is not 2 inches. What do we call the outside part of a circle? The circumference. So guess what I've got to do? Just to figure out this right here, I have to find the circumference of that semicircle. All right, so how do I find, well, first off, actually, is this the diameter, that 2, or is that the radius? It's the diameter because it's the distance all the way across our semicircle. So we are going to use C equals pi times D for diameter. So is it a full circle? No. It's a half a circle. So I'm going to divide that by 2. All right, so once again, we are focusing right now only on this tiny little part right here. So let's go ahead and start plugging things in. Kalani, what's my pi?
3.14.
Elena, what's my diameter?
2 inches.
Okay, very good. And then what do I have to do? Divide it by 2 because it's a semicircle. Connor, can anything cross reduce? Yes, what can? The 2's can turn into a 1. Guys, what is the perimeter or the circumference around that tiny little part? 3.14. Now, if I just figured out this right here, the distance around is 3.14 inches. Is that the perimeter around the whole composite figure? No. Look, how much do you think this one is? All right, guys, what would that little circle over there be? Also 3.14. What would this little one be? And what would this one be? So I could take 3.14 plus 3.14 plus 3.14 plus 3.14. Or what's the easier way to do that? We're just going to multiply it by 4 because there were 4 semicircles that we needed to find. So we're going to take 3.14 and multiply that times the 4 different shapes that I had. Guys, what's the answer?
12.56.
Do I need to square my units? No, because it's just finding the distance around. I do not need to square the units. Second part of this, we're going to go ahead and find the area. If you remember with the area, what we've got to do is figure out which shapes it gave us in our original problem. So I'm going to erase my drawings over here. What is one of the shapes that you see in the middle of that whole composite figure? A square. So let's go ahead and start with the area of a square. Plus, what other shape do you see there? A semicircle. How many semicircles do you see?
4.
All right, so we're going to say plus 4 semicircles. Remember, one of the toughest parts is remembering what those formulas are. Dominic, what is the formula for the area of a square? A equals S squared. Plus, we have 4 semicircles, so I'm going to add 4 times. Does anyone know the formula of a semicircle? Remember, we want the area, not the circumference.
Pi r squared divided by 2.
Correct. Pi r squared, that's the formula for a circle, the area of a circle. But we have semicircles, so we're dividing by 2. So now we're going to go ahead and plug in some points. Joseph, what is the length of the side in my square?
2 inches.
2 inches is correct. And it tells me s squared, so I've got to do 2 squared. Plus, we have 4 semicircles times, Olivia, what's my pi? 3.14. Now, remember over here, guys, this that we said, the diameter equals 2 inches. So what is the radius?
1.
Okay, because it's half. So now when I come back over here, I've got to multiply it times r squared. What's my radius?
1 inch.
1 inch squared. And once again, it's a semicircle, so we're going to divide it by 2. Drop down the next thing. Can you guys tell me what 2 squared is? 4. It means 2 times 2 is 4. Plus 4 semicircles. Is there any work I can do within my parentheses? Yes, there is. What's the first thing I should do within the parentheses?
Square 1.
Square the 1. Guys, what is 1 squared?
1.
1. Listen, someone just said that I could cross out my 2's. I want to explain to you, dividing by a 2 and having a square is not the same thing. So you cannot cross those 2 out, okay? All right, so he just said 1 squared is 1. And then we've still got to divide by 2 because these are semicircles. So dropping things down, guys. Remember PEMDAS. What comes first, multiplying or adding? Multiplying, which means you cannot just add 4 plus 4. You will get the wrong answer if you do that. So we're going to drop down our 4 because the 4 is getting multiplied by everything inside of our parentheses once we get our parenthesis work done. What is 3.14 times 1?
3.14.
It's just 3.14. Now, what is 3.14 divided by 2? 1.57. Once again, remind me of PEMDAS. Can I add these 2 right now? No, because if you remember, there's a number out here which tells me these 2 need to get multiplied together. What is 4 times 1.57?
4.57.
5.57.
What is 4 times 1.57?
6.28.
6.28. All right, so now what you got to do is add those 2 together. What is the area of our composite figure?
10.28.
Squared.
Why are you squaring it?
That's the area.
Okay, it is the area, so it's going to be inches squared. For our review question today, find the area of the circle, use 3.14 for pi. Looking at the circle, guys, does it give me the radius or the diameter?
Radius.
It gives us the radius because that's half the circle from the distance in the middle to the edge. What is the formula for finding area of a circle?
A equals pi r2.
Not pi r2, but pi r squared. Go ahead and do it with your partner and see what you guys come up with. All right, guys, what is pi?
3.14.
What's my radius?
4.5.
What do I have to do first?
The exponent.
The exponent. So what's 4.5 squared?
20.5.
All right, the biggest mistake I saw as I walked around is people still thought it was 4.5 times 2. Please just remember when you have that square right there, it means to multiply by itself, not times the number 2. All right, so out of that, when you multiply it together, this is what you should have come up with. Let's round that to the nearest tenth. And what do you get, guys?
63.6 inches squared.
All right, how many of you got that? Are there any questions about that?
Yes.
we got it.
Let's go.
Okay, so the homework assignment that goes with 9.3 is this right here. There's only 6 problems. You do not have to do it tonight, but if you want to do it a night early, you may.